The footsteps in my living room, when I was still tangled up in bed, were no dream. No way. They were totally real. And it was not my cat or my boyfriend. It was him, my landlord, standing there. And I was in bed, completely naked, completely exposed. My heart still seizes up just recalling it. Honestly, a cold, hard stone in my chest that just says, "You're not safe."
Ugh.
So, I just have to get this out. I'm still reeling, and honestly, I don't know if I'm totally overdoing it or if this is as insane as it makes me feel. My name is Jolie, I'm 28, and I've had my own apartment for almost 3 years now. It's a one-bedroom, small one, in an older building, in a very, very quiet tree-lined neighborhood. The rent is surprisingly affordable for the area, and the location is perfect for my commute. It's always felt like my space, my sanctuary after long days at my marketing job. I've put so much effort into making it feel like home. The cozy reading nook by the window, the string lights in the bedroom, the plants that are somehow still alive despite my questionable green thumb. My landlord is Mr. Henderson. He's probably in his late 60s, maybe early 70s. He lives in the apartment below mine, which I'd always pictured as kinda convenient for repairs, although thank goodness I hadn't had too many major issues. He's always just seemed alright. Kind of old-fashioned, maybe a bit of a chatterer when I'd catch him walking down the hall, but otherwise hands-off. He'd sometimes ask how things were going or comment on the weather, just regular landlord small talk, you know? I even considered him a pretty good landlord overall. He was responsive with the repair requests, didn't raise rent too much, and appeared to have some interest in the building. I mean, he'd say the mail if he got a package for me, and once even left a small bag of fresh tomatoes he'd grown himself on my doorstep. I really figured I had totally struck it lucky. That dream ended last Tuesday. In a huge way. It was still dark outside, or just barely dawned. My alarm was not yet due to ring for another hour, and I was that heavy, dream-laden sleep, the one in which you are floating. I remember a faint creaking, like a floorboard creaking under me. I stretched out, thinking it was the building settling, or maybe my cat, Luna, leaping off the bed. But then I heard another sound, this time nearer than the first. A soft click, and the unmistakable, clean creak of my front door opening. I leapt out of bed. I thought for a moment that I was dreaming. My bedroom door stood open, and there, stood against the faint glow of the living room, was a figure. A man. My heart pounded, but not merely hard. It went into my throat, a wild bird in a cage. My mind spun, trying to calculate. Burglar? No, the man had been too loose-shouldered. And then, when my eyes finally focused, and the terror started to give way to a sick rush of identification, I saw him. It was Mr. Henderson. He stood just in the other side of my living room, about 10 feet away from my slightly ajar bedroom door. He wasn't looking directly at me, but rather across the room, his head cocked to one side. He was wearing a light jacket like he'd just come in or was just going out. He didn't seem to have noticed me at all, still half hidden behind the shadows and my duvet. I was frozen. Absolutely, totally frozen. I couldn't move, scream, or even breathe normally. All I could do is stand, my heart pounding against the ribs, so hard I was sure he'd hear it. Then he leaned his head a little to one side, and his eyes landed on my bed. On me. His eyes went wide. His entire body froze. The relaxed position was lost, replaced with instant, stiff awkwardness. He resembled a deer in the headlights. Only I was the deer, and I was in my own home. He stuttered, a gagging sound that came from his throat.
Oh, Jolie?
My goodness. I didn't know you were home. Didn't know I was home. At 6 a.m. in my own apartment, where I reside? The ridiculousness of it nearly caused me to laugh, but the fear was just too engrossing. I simply lay there, gaping, my mouth parched, incapable of constructing a word. My mind was shouting, "Get out! Get out!" He retreated, and another. "I'm so awfully sorry," he apologized, glancing down and hurrying. I heard a noise. Thought something was wrong. I was just checking. He gestured vaguely in the air with his hand, then retreated from my apartment, closing the door with a soft click behind him. Quiet. The kind of quiet that screams. For what felt like an eternity, I did not move. My body stayed rigid with shock, adrenaline pumping in my veins. My hands trembled so violently I could actually see the duvet trembling. Tears started to well up, burning and searing, but I was unable to cry, couldn't release the knot of fear that had entwined itself in my chest. I just lay there, staring at the closed bedroom door, then the closed front door, trying to make sense of what had happened. He was in my apartment, while I was sleeping, without knocking, Without announcement. He had a key. He just strolled in. For real. Finally, I dragged myself out of bed, my legs shaking. The very first thing I did was examine the deadbolt. It wasn't locked. I always lock it up at night, always. But I guess I must have forgotten last night, or maybe I was too sleepy. The possibility made my stomach churn. Even so, he had no right. No right at all. I fumbled with the lock, catching the deadbolt, then the chain lock. I had an urgent need to lock myself inside, to make my sanctuary impenetrable again. I grabbed my phone and called my best friend, Emily. It was only 6:15 a.m., but I didn't care. She answered, sleepy. Jolie? What's it? He was here. I stuttered out, the words finally coming, broken and jagged. Mr. Henderson. He just entered, while I slept. Emily sat bolt upright. What? Jolie, are you okay? Call the police. No, he departed. He heard a sound. He apologized. But he was in here. I wept then, the tears finally flowing, hot and disheveled. The feeling of invasion, of trespassing upon my own space, was suffocating. My home, my sanctuary, had always been my safe place. Now, it felt like a glass house. Emily phoned me for an hour, calming me down, assuring me that my feelings were valid. She was furious, outraged on my behalf. That is just not okay, Jolie. He's violating the law. He owes you notice, always. Even if he thought something was amiss, he should have knocked and introduced himself, not just burst in. Later in the day, after a cold shower and good slug of coffee, a hot anger supplanted the fear. I couldn't just let this go. I needed an explanation, a real one, not some stammering excuse. I noticed his car still in the driveway, so I knew he was home. I took a deep breath, walked downstairs, and rapped firmly on his door. He opened it, slightly rumpled looking, like he'd been trying to avoid me. His eyes darted everywhere, but mine.
Jolie.
Good morning. Mr. Henderson, I said, trying to keep my voice even, but my fists were clenched at my sides. We need to talk about this morning. He released a long, exasperated sigh. Jolie, I said, I apologize. I truly had thought the unit was empty. I heard this odd dripping sound, and then I was just checking on the pipes. I did not want it to be a larger issue. You have to provide notice, I said, my tone a bit higher despite myself. 24 hours. You can't just come into my apartment. Not when I'm sleeping, especially. He shifted awkwardly, shuffling on his feet. I know. It was a mistake. A miscalculation. I was only trying to be one step ahead of the game. I figured you were already in the office. My car was in the driveway, I said, my voice rich in incredulity. And even if it weren't, you don't enter somebody's home. It's an invasion. He finally glanced at me, and there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Annoyance? Regret? I know you're angry, Jolie, and I apologize once more. It won't happen again. I promise. He said it with sincerity, but the words didn't have substance. It was a near apology but a brush-off, a way to kill the subject in a hurry. He offered no real assurance, only a vague promise. I departed that meeting more agitated. His apology felt forced, and his checking pipes explanation felt flimsy. I had not noticed any dripping, and if he had, why wouldn't he knock loudly or call me? Why let himself in? The whole episode was suspicious. The incident was replayed in my mind day and night. Each creak of the building, each distant siren, each dark shape looming suddenly appeared menacing. My home, my haven, was now beginning to feel like a stage, and I was constantly on display. I started to double lock the doors before I went to bed, and even during the day if I popped out for a few minutes. I bought a door wedge for the bedroom door, just in case, and sleep eluded me, haunted by nightmares of unlocked doors and dark shadows. I'd wake up sweating in bed, my heart racing, certain that I'd heard something. The psychological effect was enormous. I was tense, irritable, and couldn't concentrate at work. My colleagues could notice that I was quieter, more reserved. I talked to a few good friends, and they were all individually appalled. My lawyer buddy Mark promptly sent me the links to our state's tenant rights law. Reading them reinforced what Emily had informed me. Landlords must provide reasonable notice, usually 24 or 48 hours, to enter a tenant's premises, except in cases of genuine emergency, like a fire or flood. A dripping sound that only he could hear, and no other, at 6 a.m., was not an emergency. This wasn't a mistake. This was a deliberate disregard for my rights and for my privacy. What most irritated me, however, was the trust. I had trusted Mr. Henderson. I had seen him as a harmless, almost paternal figure. Now, all the previous interactions seemed tainted. Had he always been this way? Had he ever been inside my apartment when I was not there?
The thought nauseated me.
I started noticing little things. A plant that seemed to have been shoved a little out of place. A window that I could have sworn I'd closed but now was open. A scent of cologne when I opened the door, though I never wore any. Before, I dismissed them as my imagination, or maybe just the idiosyncrasies of an old building. Now, they appeared to be breadcrumbs leading me to a dreadful realization. The mood in the building became strained, at least to me. I found myself observing Mr. Henderson more. Or maybe I was looking for him. I'd see him staring out his window when I headed to work, or tending to his garden when I came home. He'd still give a polite nod, but his usual loquaciousness was noticeably absent, instead being filled with strained silence. I felt like he was glowering at me, waiting for me to leave. My paranoia was totally in overdrive. I even considered installing a small, discreet camera, but I wasn't sure if that was legal as a renter. And then there was the twist, or more accurately, the larger moment that settled my mind. I was in the communal laundry room one day, folding my own laundry, when two other tenants, two elderly women who had lived in the building for generations, were chatting. "Did you hear that Mrs. Rodriguez went out in such a rush?" one of them asked another.
Oh, yes.
"I heard she just couldn't take it anymore." The other one leaned in to whisper. Said Mr. Henderson was always calling on her, letting himself into repair things she didn't even know were broken. Said he even caught her once when she was taking a shower. My blood ran cold. The laundry basket slipped out of my hands, spilling my freshly washed laundry on the floor. The two women looked at me. "Oh, dear Jolie, are you all right?" one of them asked. I could only stare at them, my mind spinning. He arrested Mrs. Rodriguez? I managed to stutter out. The women exchanged a look. "Well, that's what she said," the first one repeated, her voice lowering. She was furious. Said he had a habit of just opening himself up. Said he was too attentive to his tenants. I wasn't single-handedly responsible. This wasn't some single mistake. This was a routine. A very troubling, intrusive routine. The anger that had been simmering finally boiled over. I wasn't just a renter who had a bad experience. I was part of an overriding problem, and he was a landlord who consistently violated privacy. I came home, my hands shaking, but this time not out of fear, but with angry justice. I grabbed my laptop and composed a proper letter. I referred to the actual state laws governing landlord visitation. I recounted last Tuesday's event, emphasizing the lack of notice and invasion of privacy. I also indirectly referenced prior similar incidents that have been reported by other tenants, without citing names. I made it very clear that any further entry into my apartment, for any reason other than a genuine emergency, would be preceded by at least 24 hours written notice, personally served or mailed certified, and that I fully expected him to be so bound by law. I concluded by stating that a failure to comply would find me pursuing all available legal remedies, including ending my lease penalty-free. I printed one out, signed it, and took it down to the post office to mail it certified mail. Return receipt requested. I want to know he received it. It was exhilarating, like I was starting to regain some control. A few days after, the green card came back with his signature on it. He had seen the letter. The atmosphere in the building shifted once again. Mr. Henderson stopped making eye contact altogether. He'd race past me along the hallway, or pretend to be doing something in his garden when I came or went. He never spoke to me except it was strictly necessary, and even then only in short, awkward phrases. The silence was heavy, but a heavy silence of avoidance, not a heavy silence of impending threat. I was still uneasy, but less fearful. I knew he had realized that I wasn't kidding. The instant fear of him just walking in was dispelled and replaced with cold, distant remoteness. But the damage was done. My apartment, my haven, was no longer fully mine. The security had been irreparably breached. I couldn't keep him out of my thoughts standing there, just beyond my door, as I slept. There you have it. My lease expires in 3 months, and I've already started looking around for a new place. It's a pain, and the rent will certainly be higher, but I just can't remain here. I can't live in a place where I am constantly on guard, where the person who holds keys to my home has been so openly disrespectful of my constitutional right to privacy. I don't know if this is a satisfying resolution, because the emotional scars are definitely still there. I am more guarded now, more careful. But I do feel strong. I stood up for myself. I didn't just let it slide. It's not complete, not yet, but at least I'm not sitting idle here, waiting for the next knock that never comes, or worse, the one that does. I'm taking steps to reclaim my peace of mind, apartment by apartment.